यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य
गणानान्त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनः शृण्वन्नोतिभिस्सीदसादनम् ॐ श्री महागणाधिपतये नमो नमः। ॐ ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्या संप्रदाय कर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहितप्रज्ञानघनप्रत्यगर्थो ब्रह्माहमस्मि सोऽहमस्मि ब्रह्माहमस्मि। ॐ प्रपन्नपारिजाताय तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। हरिः ओम। May the Almighty Shri Lord Venkateshwara bestow all kinds of prosperity, health, wealth and eternal happiness with Paripurna Lakshmi Katakshams to you and the entire your family and friends. Let us begin Bhagavad Gita, verse number 19 of 14th chapter. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Nanyam Gunebhyah Kartaram Yada Drashtanupashyati Gunebhyascha Param Veti Madbhavam Sodhigacchati. As we learned, there are three gunas. The world has to be understood as these three gunas: Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna, Tamo Guna. These three gunas are introduced through Bhagavad Gita as in the form of Upanishadic knowledge. Now, world is what? World is not made up of five elements. So, world is nothing but three gunas. That's what the understanding we should have after completing 18th sloka of this chapter. This is a very useful understanding to set a proper vision of the world. World is nothing but our own experience. That's what the message from Bhagavan Krishna. World is your experience, my dear. So, other than your experience, whatever exists, that doesn't called world. Your world is different than others' world. Like that, every one of us, we do experience our own world. I cannot experience your world. We both cannot experience the world of third person. So therefore, the world is to be understood as three gunas. This is a unique understanding only we find from Shastra. How this understanding will help me to fix myself with the world, it helps in various level in our life. It helps me to transcend these three gunas. It means what? I can transcend the world. After transcending, where do I reach? I reach the entity which is beyond three gunas. Is there any entity beyond three gunas? Yes, there is an entity beyond three gunas, which is explained here through two verses. Verse number 19 and 20, they explain it. In order to arrive to the conclusion, there is one entity called Gunathita. We call it a Nirgunam even. The chapter begins with Bhagavan's pratigna that Bhagavan himself said, I would teach a knowledge by knowing which you won't enter into birth death circles. Then he introduced Guna Vivekaha, Traigunya Vivekaha. What are they? Traigunya Vivekaha, Sattva Guna Vivekaha. Vivekaha means knowledge. Then Rajo Guna Vivekaha, Tamo Guna Vivekaha. All the details he put in 5 topics. First, he said Lakshana of Gunatraya Vivekaha. The definitions of these three gunas. What are the definitions? That we saw elaborately. Sattva Guna is Prakashatmakam. Rajo Guna is karmatmakam. Or we can say ragatmakam. Both, it gives the similar meaning. Then the third one is tamoguna, that which brings pramadatmakam. That is the lakshana. So lakshana means what? A proper definition. Proper definition about something which causes for all kinds of problem to be realized by every one of us. Because we drastically make effort to come out of our problems, not knowing which causes to our problems. The cause of the problems are so subtle. So those subtlety must be observed and observed. What I mean to say, it has to be understood very clearly. Then alone we can transcend or come across those cause of the problems. Those cause of the problems are divided into 3 gunas. And many people may not understand. When I say, Swamiji, I say, nahi hota hai. It's not like that. అట్లా లేదండి, అప్పుడు ఇల్ల సార్, లేదండి చూస్తే మనకు నచ్చ తెలుస్తుంది. We will come to know very clearly, yes, these 3 gunas causes to the problem. Therefore, he gave the definitions first as of number 1 topic, then the second topic, number 2 topic, he revealed how do they bind us. Because Satoguna wants to have a knowledge-friendly environment. If a person who is predominated by Satoguna, he likes and he wishes to be with an environment, the environment which supports him to be endowed with knowledge. Therefore, the nature of that person to become conducive with knowledge-oriented environment. He wants to use Jnanendriyani. Jnanendriyani means you should know that the seeing capacity, hearing capacity, and tasting capacity, touching capacity. So these 5 Jnanendriyas and Buddhi, the intellect, is the tool for him to live in this world. The knowledge-friendly environment is liked by the person who is predominated by Sattva-guna. If he is not getting that environment, he will be disturbed. So his ego. So finally, the 3 gunaha means what? An entity which is occupied by 3 gunas. That entity is known as I, the Ahankara. Ahankara means what? Sakshat, our self is called Ahankara. The self means you have to remember. If I ask you, how are you, sir? Immediately you will say, I am fine. But few people, when you say, how are you, sir? That's all. They will begin the story, I am not good because, I had 3 children. The third one is not doing well and he is not interested in studying. I don't know what to be done with that. He will begin saying that. So whatever the way the reply comes from where? That is known as Ahankara. Ahankara means the ego. The ego word has to be given proper meaning. Ego means not gamand, not becoming adamant. It's not the meaning of ego. Ego means we call it id in the language of this psychology, the philosophy of psychology. They call it id, id, I suppose. But that I is not a original I. That is the I which is nothing but a reflection of something. That I which is connected with body-mind complex. Now we think that is me. You think that is you. And all of us, we think that, so that I is our original nature, which is not true. Now that I which cannot escape from gunas, that's what I say, it becomes a victim always. The only thing that I can be reshuffled with other gunas. Either it has to be predominated by Sattva guna or Rajo guna or Tamo guna. So now Ahankara, either it should be endowed with Sattva guna or Rajo guna and Tamo guna. Do you understand what I say? So you cannot become gunathitaha. You cannot come across of 3 gunas because 3 gunas are nothing but the creations. It's very tough, to realize, and in order to understand, not only understand, accept too. So accepting, yes, I am victimized by three gunas is very difficult. If you are able to accept it, then you will look for the solution. How can I escape from these three gunas? No chance to escape from three gunas. There is only one way to come across, by reaching or by identifying gunatitaha, that which is beyond three gunas. So where is that entity which is beyond three gunas? That is what our original nature is. The original nature which is not bound by three gunas. In order to arrive at that conclusion, we have to study about these three gunas in detailed way. Therefore, Bhagavan gave us, Lakshana first, then Bandhana Prakara. How do they bind us? So, Satoguna is bound by knowledge-oriented environment. Rajoguna is bound by what? Action-oriented environment. That person is conducive about action-oriented environment. He wants to do something. He wants to achieve something. He wants to fight, argue and prove himself. He wants to establish his organizations or his work in the world. He will become popular among the people. He wants to get name and fame. You can see only restlessness. Always endowed with the activities. Action-oriented environment. If you ask him to sit doing nothing for half an hour, it would become a punishment for him. Then the third one is Tamoguna. Tamoguna will bind with the nature of drowsiness, inactivity. Not only that, adharma-friendly environment. Being with the drugs and being with the junk food and being with wrong people and becoming, like a asura bhava. The person who can own a kind of demon nature. This is how they bound. Bandhana Prakaram was the second topic. Then third topic, Lingam. How can we understand? Lingam means indication. How can a person to be understood whether he is predominated by Sattva or Rajas or Tamas? So that Lakshana was given as a third topic. Then fourth was Gati. So by having a particular nature in our Ahankara or with our Ahankara, so what would be the Gati? Gati means what would be the next phenomenon are going to take place in our mind. So how would take us, how would it lead, they lead our life to the next level? That was told. Then finally Palam, the fruit, the benefit of these three gunas, all of them were clearly explained by Lord Krishna. Okay, finally we come to know the ego, the I which is experienced by us in limited way, it is a reflection. If there is a reflection, the reflection which is victimized by three gunas, then the reflection should have a original. When we go in front of a mirror, we can see our reflection. Okay, that reflection will be endowed with the qualities and the shape of mirror, the color of mirror. Whatever the qualities, it belongs to that mirror, will be owned by the reflection. In order to come out of that quality, the reflection, what it should be done. The reflection cannot escape from the quality of the mirror. But the person who is looking at the reflection in that mirror, if he wants to come out of the quality of the mirror, he doesn't like the color of the mirror, he doesn't like the size of the mirror, he doesn't like the quality, because some mirrors are not having clear visions, it is not having clarity. If he wants to come out of the clarity, what he has to do, he doesn't have any other choice than identifying himself with the real face. That identification will help him to come out of the quality of the mirror. Though the reflection, let the reflection be endowed with all kinds of quality of the mirror, But when you identify yourself with your real face, you will be out of the problems. Okay, that's what the techniques which Bhagavan brings for us to understand. This is a kind of unique journey in which there is no action is involved. The journey means the word itself, it denotes an action, but it's a journey that which doesn't involve an action. The journey which completely depended on the knowledge. The knowledge which is in the form of realization, or we can say the realization which is nothing but the proper identifications. We have to shift the identification. We should not think that reflection is me. We have to say that we have to think, we have to analyze. So the reflection and the face, both are different. Though the reflection is cast by the face, real face, but reflection cannot bother original face. The quality of the mirror can bother the reflected face, but not to the original face. In the same way, the characteristics, gunas, means the nature of the body can only affect to that reflected consciousness which is known as Chidabhasaha or Jivaha. It won't bother to the original source, that which is in the form of I as Atma Swarupa. That Atma Swarupa, which is nothing but pure consciousness, cannot be affected by this consciousness which is occupied by three gunas. Therefore, to travel being gunatrayaha to gunathitaha is just by only realization is possible. That's all the Bhagavan wants us to realize. Okay, let us read the verse number 19. Nanyam gunebhyah kartaram yada drashtanu pashyati gunebhyascha param veti madbhavam sodhigacchati. Now gunathita vivekaha is explained. Now ahankara cannot become gunathitaha. Gunathitaha need not to become gunathitaha. Do you understand what I say? So he need not to become gunathitaha because it is already gunathita. Gunathita means what? The entity which is beyond guna. So just it requires to have mere realization. That's what he says. When seer understands, seer means a seeker, a student understands. Therefore he says, Yada drashta anyam gunebhyaha kartaram na anupashyanti. Then what? Gunebhyascha param cha veti saha madbhavam adhigacchati. The person who realizes that entity which is beyond three guna attains me. That's all. He need not to have a travel for that. He need not to set a journey for it, because it is there like a water in the hand. When you take a drop of water in your hand, you need not to look at here and there. It is there with you. Like that, when you understand the reality of body, mind, sense complex with the ego, all of them are occupied as triguna sahitaha, saguna vastuni. Then you can identify yourself as beyond those saguna in the form of nirguna. That's all the things to be understood. Finally, Bhagavan concludes, we are, that we is a plural, isn't it? So I have to use I am not a person who can be occupied by gunas. My ego, that's the limited I, or we can say lower I. My lower I is subjected to the gunas. My higher nature, that higher I, which is not subjected to gunas. Just I have to identify it. Then the next words, Guna netanati yatrin dehi deha samudbhavan janma mrityu jara dukkhaihi vimukto mritam ashnuti. By having that proper identification, what would be the benefit? Because the travel is completed. The travel from ego to supreme consciousness or limited consciousness to supreme consciousness. The travel is not outside, and that travel doesn't have, the kilometers, the gap, huge gap. It doesn't have any gap at all. What can be the difference between the reflected and the original? So there is no gap at all, because reflection depends on only the medium. The original doesn't undergo any modifications. When there is a sunlight, the sunlight is kept in the mirror. So the mirror is receiving the reflected consciousness, means reflected sun. That reflected sun is nothing to do with original sun, but lightning is borrowed. The light is borrowed, the brightness is borrowed, that's all. Therefore this ahankara, which is bound by three gunas, is to be realized. Then what? This ahankara won't have the capacity or will not be bothering us. That's what the understanding we should arrive at. We will continue further from next session tomorrow. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namo Namaha. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.